All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Hello, and welcome to today's Talk Time with the Able Trust, where we will be discussing enabling and empowering your remote workforce. My name is Guinevere Crum, and I am Senior Vice President at the Able Trust and your host today. Our session speakers are Tony Carvajal, President and CEO of the Able Trust, and Jeff Zbar, author and consultant of thechiefhomeofficer.com. We will start the session in just a moment, but a few housekeeping details first. As a reminder, this discussion is being recorded and will be posted to the Able Trust website next week. Closed captioning is available today and can be activated by clicking CC on the Zoom toolbar and then choosing to see subtitles displayed or a transcript on the side of your screen. Welcome to all the audience members and the many staff from the Florida Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Thank you for partnering with us and attending today. In the chat box, if you haven't already done so, take a moment to introduce yourself to the other audience members and don't forget to change those settings to all participants so that your peers will see your introduction. We will be using the Q&A box to ask questions, make comments, and we will be discussing some of those questions submitted there. So as a question comes to mind, please do share it. Today's event is brought to you by the Able Trust. The Able Trust is dedicated to creating employment opportunities for Floridians with disabilities and advancing the mission of the Florida Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Since created by the Florida Legislature in 1990, we have partnered with thousands of organizations, businesses, and individuals to create a stronger and more diverse and inclusive workforce. Empowerment, education, and employment are the root cause and outcomes of the activities, partnerships, grants, and programs we support. The Able Trust has provided over $42 million in direct grants over the years, and this has been made possible by the generosity of the state of Florida, other foundations, community leaders, and individuals that have decided to invest in the future by supporting career development and employment placement for individuals with disabilities. To find out how you can make such an investment to support the work of the Able Trust and to connect with all of our programming and resources, we invite you to join us online at www.abletrust.org and on Twitter at AbleTrust and Facebook at The Able Trust and LinkedIn on the-able-trust. We would like to hear from you. Today, we invite you to tweet about this discussion in real time or to post webinar and to post on the webinar and tag us along with @AbleTrust and by using the hashtag TalkTime. I'm now going to turn this over to my colleague and the Able Trust President and CEO, Tony Carvajal, who along with Jeff Zbar of thechiefhomeofficer.com will be leading the discussion today. Tony, the floor is all yours.
Guinevere, thank you. And thank you so much for the background on the Able Trust. It is my pleasure to work with folks like you and so many of the volunteers that we have, not only participating on this particular webinar, but throughout the year. And as Guinevere said, we are going to use the chat feature as we go forward, as well as the Q&A function. So if you haven't already used the chat feature, make sure that you open that and change the setting to all panelists and attendees so everybody can see who you are. Let us know that you've joined us and be ready in a short while to participate, because we've got a great program. We're going to have a conversation about remote work. And this is pretty interesting because in January, we were absolutely certain that we couldn't do remote work. It was not the way we would do business. It's just not possible. We couldn't let people leave the office. And then in March, we actually reversed ourselves and we transitioned to remote work with a passion and a fire that was amazing and a speed that we're going to talk a little bit about today. But before we go into that, I really want to get into a poll just to find out what the situation is of those folks that are here. So Guinevere, if you wouldn't mind opening up this first poll. For those of you who are on the screen, you should be seeing a poll, and I'll read you the options. What it actually asks is, which best describes your current situation? And the options are you working remotely and loving it? Or are you working remotely, but it's not really your thing? Third option is working remotely some of the time. Fourth option is not working remotely, but you would like to. And the last option is not working remotely, but it might happen soon. So go ahead and make a selection there. you should be able to click on one of those options. And in just a moment, we're going to open this up. We're not going to take too much time here. I'm just trying to get a setting here, make sure that everybody's using the controls. So Guinevere, we're just going to go about 5 more seconds, and then let's see what folks have mentioned here.
Yeah, so we have almost 80% of you have voted. So last call for your votes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, everybody's on it.
All right, so let's see the results there, and I'll try to enlarge my view here so that I can make sure that I can read this, but just in case. All right, it looks like most of us are working remotely and loving it. So if this category is yours, in the chat, what I want you to do is highlight some of the things that are really making this work for you. Is it the fact that you're home and close to a refrigerator? Because what Jeff and I were talking about before was my suits seem to be shrinking as I go along, and that's not necessarily working for me. But the next largest category is we're working remotely some of the time. We've got a number of colleagues, Jeff, here that are from Division of Vocational Rehab, and they are splitting time. Some days half the staff goes in, the other days the rest of the staff goes in. And we've got a few other folks that have sprinkled it in here, and some of us that don't really like this very much. But what I hear as we're going through is that many people don't want to go back into the office. Now, I don't think that that's a statement about work. I think that that's a statement about the efficiency and the opportunities here. And by the way, that message is being echoed by the businesses as well. I was reading some of the forecasting documents that come in with some of our investment results, and they were talking about what they called secular themes. You know, there's a shifting patterns in both consumption and how people work, and a demand for flexibility and cost controls, and you know, the resilience and adaptation and speed that comes with remote work is something that's actually going to carry us well into the future. But obviously not every system moves at the pace of markets and consumers. So things like government and regulation and production and providers and policymakers move a little bit slower. So we're going to be talking about how to set up a remote workplace, as well as some of these other broader themes. But before we go any further, Guinevere, there's one more poll. So if you could start pulling it up. I want to find out what you want to hear about today. We're going to spend about an hour together. We are recording this program, so some of you are watching this after the fact, and I appreciate that. We're going to capture the chat and comments that are being made as we go along, and we'll be able to share all this information. But the poll that's up right now talks about which of the following you want to dive in a little deeper into. Now, we're going to cover all of these, but I wanted Jeff to see what some of the folks that are on the call today, on the webinar, are interested in. So the first option is designing a good space, the layout systems, basically. And then there's comments about tools, devices, and equipments that we can use to maximize efficiency, productivity, and maybe a little bit about distraction, because that is one of the things that comes up a lot of times. Social needs and how are we going to work as teams as we go forward. And by the way, you can choose more than one option, so don't limit yourself. If you want to check them all, that's fine. If you just want to check one or two, that's great. Managing remote workers, remote work for individuals with disabilities. As you know, the ABLE Trust has a mission of finding and securing meaningful and sustainable work for persons with disabilities, but many of the things we're going to be talking about do not necessarily have to apply to just one setting. It's going to be good for everybody, that curb cut effect. And then we'll have a little bit of conversation, but we want to know how much you want to know about the future of home-based work and the gig economy. So Guinevere, I probably read that slowly enough that we've had most of the people vote by now.
Well, we're getting
some
there.
Comments too, so.
Yes, so we're about 72% and
awesome.
Climbing. So
thanks for using the chat feature as well. I see things about productivity and flexibility, and wow, that's a great question. Jeff, here's one that we might need to get to at some point. Remote work for individuals without the internet. You know, we assume that there's great coverage around the state, but the reality is not always the case. So let's dive into that when you get a chance.
Absolutely.
All right, last call for votes.
All right, let's see what the results are. So we're spread across all the topics. It looks like remote work for individuals with disabilities is one of those items that we're going to talk about here. But Jeff, you and I were talking as we prepped for this call, just about everything that we're discussing today will work across most settings.
Right.
And to be absolutely fair to everybody on this call, you know, we publicize this as two presenters, but the reality is that you all are part of our presenter base too. We really wanted you to activate the chat feature because we're going to take your comments. And as we go along, if you've got some particular comments about what we're discussing, either how it works or it doesn't work, or what we need to do to update policies and procedures and reimbursement strategies, we want you to actually be a presenter with us. So the chat feature is being recorded. We're going to capture those comments. We're going to integrate them into our conversation. I'm reading as we go along. But let me not delay anymore. I really want to introduce you to somebody that I've gotten a chance to know this year. He's a writer, a consultant, and a recognized business expert. I've had a chance to work with him on some work that he's done on some publications. But most recently, I've gotten to know him as the Chief Home Officer. And you can find a little bit more about him at thechiefhomeofficer.com. So Jeff, why don't you start us off with a conversation here? Tell us a little bit about your experience. You're not new to this game.
I'm not new, and thank you to Tony, Guinevere, and Joe and the team at the Able Trust for bringing me on board for this. And this is one of these things that is near and dear to my heart. I started working from home back in 1989. I quit my last lousy, ill-paying day job, said I think I can do this better myself. And I became a freelance journalist. I had studied journalism at the University of Florida, worked for about 2 years in the market, and then I had a very supporting wife. I don't know that she knew how supporting she would have to be, as I was launching a small writing business back then. But my business has grown. Life has been good. Business has been good, thank God. And what we've found along the way is I've worked from home since 1989. Back when anybody who among this crew might have been, and you know, please let us know how long you've been working from home, if it's, you know, pre-pandemic as it were. But back then, if you worked from home, you were a pariah. You were somebody who couldn't hack it in the corporate world. You got canned from your last day job and couldn't find another. And so what happened with me is throughout the early 90s into the mid and later 90s, into that sort of the .com phenomenon, work at home, home officing, telework started to take off. And I say take off, it was still in the single to low double digits, but it started to gain traction out there. And companies were exploring it, but there was still significant pushback. And, you know, throughout the early 2000s, the aughts, as it were, up into the 2010s and the teens, it was gaining traction as technology caught up. And so people started to embrace it. Throughout that time, in about 1995, I created the website. It's actually called chiefhomeofficer.com. I say the as an introduction, Jeff, the chiefhomeofficer.com, but it's chiefhomeofficer.com. But I created that as a way to help individuals who are trying to learn how to work from home, how to pitch the concept of work from home with kids, with spouses, fighting the what I call SOHO psychology, an acronym behind home officing is small office, home office, or SOHO, mastering the mindset of working from home. And that's what a lot of us are dealing with now. I would say a lot of you are dealing with now, because I've kind of gotten it down over 30 years. I'm not an actual quick study, but I picked it up over time. And so, you know, my work along the way has helped me to help others learn how to do it. The technology, the tools, the space in the home that's ideal for working from home, all the different things that come to mind that might help accomplish this. And so when you and I started talking about this, I thought it was and I've written about the disabled and how individuals with disabilities are able to work from home, and different organizations that are helping and seeing the light there and saying that, you know, this is, I don't need to toot the horn of the organization, because you get it. Others are getting it, that when we go to work from home, it's ideal in many instances. It's not for all, but it's ideal for many individuals out there in many organizations. So again, thrilled to be a part of this and help you and your members and people on the webinar learn a little bit more about how to make this happen.
Jeff, some of the folks that are on the line know that my background is in recruiting folks and businesses to Florida. And the reality is, you know, what we're talking about, you can work from anywhere, but the reality is also that you work and live here in Florida. So thank you so much for that. And I'm looking forward to opportunities where we're going to have more individuals in this state that are being more productive, as folks are saying on the chat. And there's some interesting questions that we're going to deal with, including how do you deal with folks that maybe aren't comfortable in the virtual world, as well as, you know, the need to be hands-on sometimes with individuals with disabilities. But a lot of positive comments about no commuting, and the higher productivity. We'll talk about why our close is shrinking maybe near the end of this, but let's talk about the layout.
Somebody complained on here and said their dryer has been screwing up and their washing machine. So I think they've got to call the Maytag man and see what's up with that.
I think you're absolutely on. So I'm looking in your background, and one of the nice things about Zoom is we get to see so many of the different offices and the layouts and the various settings, including lots of different virtual backgrounds. But let's talk about the layout.
Sure.
I think one of the big things about productivity in the home is it's fantastic that we're working from our home. So the commute time is from our bedroom down to the kitchen to wherever we're working in our office is short. But what about the space? Tell me about what we need to be considering in terms of choosing a good layout.
Yeah, I mean, I preface all of this conversation with one overarching theme is not everybody has the ideal situation to work from home. Your job may not accommodate, your status as a manager may not work ideally. Your space in your home, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a single family home, whether it's a condo, whether you're sharing space with roommates or other family members, not everything is ideal. So the idea is to look for what's best and can suit your needs best. You know, many people come home, and especially in the pandemic, you know, you spoke early on about how people in January never would have thought of this. By March, they had no choice. And back to another quote unquote rule of telework. In an ideal situation, let's use, you know, pre and post pandemic. Pre-pandemic, telework should be voluntary. The employee should want to work from home. The employer should want to let them work from home. So it should not be, you know, the employee says, I'm going to work from home or else I'm not going to work for you. I mean, if they're that high a caliber, maybe they can call that shot. The employer shouldn't say, I have to let you work from home in order to keep you. It should be a meeting of the minds. Some jobs don't work. Some jobs may work a couple days a week. You know, you iron it out, you negotiate, you see what works best. People were thrust to work from home. Many people went to the absolute worst workspace in any home office, which is, you know, the kitchen table and the kitchen chair. And I say they're the worst because if you have others in the home, it's the most frequented room in the house, even pre-pandemic and pre-work from home. Everyone's coming through there. The table may not be the right height. The chair is an uncomfortable place to sit, and ergonomics plays a role in this. Ergonomics is the study of how space, whatever it may be, from a space shuttle to, you know, a car seat to an office chair and the space around you fits. So the space is really important. So ideally you want to find a space. Let's say in a perfect world, you'd have like I do, we have 3 children, our house has 5 bedrooms. So this is a bona fide home office for whether it's for tax purposes or productivity purposes. So it's my space. Has a door that closes, which I call the power tool of the home office. You can close the door behind you when you're coming in. You can close it behind you when you leave, so that you're not, you know, sort of intrigued or interested or sort of drawn back into the home office after hours. So you have that dedicated space. If you don't have the dedicated space, you look for an out-of-the-way nook in the home. You look for maybe if you have somebody I knew had a very large master bedroom, they put a desk off to one side. It's difficult when, as Tony and I have been collaborating on some of this, some of our conversations have been pre-working hours. So you may be a night owl, you may be an early bird, and if you're working from a bedroom with a spouse or partner or someone else in there, significant other, and you're working, it might wake them up. So, but you accommodate, you look for what's best for where you want to work. Should have good lighting, should have good airflow. If you need more airflow, you put in a fan. If you need more lighting, you put task lamps on the desk. You can hang a ceiling fan, you can put a lamp at the corner. Also, you want a good chair and desk combination. Again, ergonomics, the height of the desk is important. The height of the pitch and distance of the monitor from your face is important. So you're not either, you know, looking too much down at it or craning up to see it. Should be slightly low of center of the monitor where your eyes sort of hit the center of the screen. And you should have a chair that has, you know, a soft cushion, have arms for support, ideally 5 legs on wheels so you can adjust, and you adjust it constantly throughout the day. You're not going to be sitting there. It's really duplicating the furniture in some ways that you have in the office, in the corporate office, back in the home office. And again, ergonomics and all that is not a euphemism for expensive. You can find a lot of this stuff. You can build a lot of this stuff. The desk I'm working from now was I designed it and had it built. My desk before this was a kitchen counter from Home Depot that I slapped a couple 2x12s on the side and made a desk out of because I didn't have the money to buy a desk. So there's a lot of ways around it. It doesn't need to be costly, but you can make it work for you if you put the mindset into it and ask others and Google things to learn a little bit more about how it could work for you and what some of the work settings are.
So I'm recognizing that some of the participants today are with the Division of Vocational Rehab. Thank you so much, colleagues, for being on. And they're mentioning, looking at a client setting, not just our own setting, is one of those real opportunities as we go forward. So let's talk about devices and connectivity or equipment. Anything that, any guidance that we need to be thinking about, make sure that we've got something that you use more often. Obviously, we're Zooming right now, and these sharing technologies are pretty important, but game changers, devices, apps, connectivity issues that you think I should know about?
Well, there's a couple things. Let's start with the internet. And one of the people in a comment early on said, what if you don't have internet?
Yeah.
If you need internet for work, then you've got to obviously find a solution or it's not going to work. There is satellite internet. If you say you don't have internet because one cable provider doesn't provide it in your area, maybe another does. You can always use, I was traveling recently and I'm on AT&T and we had no connectivity in certain areas. Made me think that if I wanted to travel more and work from the road, which give me a laptop and internet connection as a writer and a consultant, I can work from anywhere. I would just get another phone or a hotspot with another carrier that you layer those footprints. Gone are the days where you automatically roam on someone else's network. AT&T and Comcast don't have those overarching sort of entire nation relationships. So you have to plan ahead that way. So, and if you don't have internet and you can't get it, and say something like a satellite internet, HughesNet, for example, is the only name I know, is impossible or too expensive, then you have to come up with another solution there. One thing also to keep in mind is, depending on the nature of the work that you do, many employees were sent home to work, and they were sent home to work on their own laptops, on their own desktop computers. Depending on what you do as a business, let's speak from the employer's perspective, from the business owner's perspective. Do you want your employees working on their technology? You don't know what they have as far as applications. Yeah. You don't know what they have as far as antivirus, malware protection, things like that. So many high-tech type companies that sent their people home either gave them to take home their desktop or laptop and docking station and monitor, whatever they needed. I know a number of those that did that. Because most, I work for a lot of publications, and your home computer just isn't powerful enough and the monitor isn't large enough to produce a newspaper. But another consideration is the safety and security. So it's a conversation. We're deep into the pandemic here, but I think, and the WFH, the work from home concept, the little acronym that came up after the pandemic hit. But we're deep into it. That many have already answered these, but this won't be the last time, or this won't be the only time we're talking about going forward, talking about working from home. So when we talk about the big ticket items as far as technology is concerned, think about how you want to outfit your teams. If they need a computer, are you prepared to buy them a laptop, a desktop, lease it, and give it to them to use? Prohibit them in most instances from downloading any software that is not either pushed out by IT or IT approved, or they have approval, whether orally or verbally, in writing or otherwise, that they can download software, and telling them that they shouldn't be spending time on social on your device. When they're out there, they should, if they want to be on social, do it on their device, off hours or during breaks, or however the time schedule is set up. But it's really important, because not only does it protect the network, it protects also those levels of liability that can come into play if you get hacked, if client data gets stolen because you open the network, or you were sort of loose with the rules on the technology, the applications, and the data that was traveling across the internet and from one network to the other. Do you need a VPN? Do you need a sort of a virtual private network so that you're a little bit more secure? Nothing is perfect. Say they want to hack. If a hacker wants to target you, they will target you and in all likelihood get in. But the chances are low, but just practice smart technology and smart surfing with all of this. And this all assumes a certain base level understanding of how you should be surfing out there, how your team should be handling email, whether they should be clicking on unexpected attachments from even people they know. If Tony, if you sent me an email today and the attachment looked foreign and I was not expecting you, I would send you a separate email and reply, a separate email, open up an email. Hey, Tony, did you send that to me? Yeah, I did. Okay, good. Click, open it up. But that's sort of like a baseline. But then when you talk about sending people home with technology, that's some of the considerations you have to keep in mind. And also whether you give them you sort of provision them with their own cell phone, their own mobile device, or they use your own. These are issues that would have preceded the pandemic in many instances, but they're going to be, as we see, and you alluded to, this may change. And anyone I talk to, CEOs out there who employ large teams, small and large teams, they see a change, a sea change happening in the way they're sending their people out to work, whether the people are coming into an office or staying home to work, or a blended model in between. These are conversations you're going to have at some point. So let's just start having them between HR, between IT, the C-suite, and your people. Again, it should be voluntary, ideally. Let's see how these conversations can work in the best interest of all involved.
So we're speaking to Jeff Zbar, chiefhomeofficer.com. And Jeff, all great advice. I'm watching the chat. Some of the things that came through, we're talking about, the challenges we're having with internet and connectivity. So many of us on at the same times, on calls, on Teams, on Zooms, you pick your device. But a very good comment came through about, different platforms. Some of the devices have made it easy to adapt, like we're on Zoom, and we didn't ask you if you had Apple or if you had a computer, but different folks have different things in their homes. So you were talking about making sure that we assign devices to individuals. It's going to be an important question for clients as we move forward. Absolutely. I know that we had to update our VPN here, and in that process of updating things, some computers didn't go forward because they were past their prime. Let's just say that. So we really need good devices as we go forward to capitalize on all the apps and stuff.
And that, Tony, that raises a point that a lot of organizations, they use a desktop or something until it dies, as opposed to saying every 3 years we're going to do a planned replacement. Now, a lot of organizations don't have the budget to do that, but you have to just be thoughtful about your technology. And so, you don't want to have, and things will crash there. You can use this sort of, saying in any ways. There are two types of computer users: those whose system is crashed and those whose system will crash. Those two types of computer users or companies: those who have been hacked and those that will be hacked. There are two types of systems: those, again, that have failed and those that will fail. So, as long as you go into it thinking that again, you have forethought about it. You don't run a system into the ground. Ideally, IT is part is an expense line, and you have to treat it as such. And if you can afford the downtime of a crash right in the middle of your biggest project of the year or your busiest time of the year, then good for you, because I know I couldn't, and so I try and stay atop that. And you asked about some tools. Pivot just a little bit. Some of the tools that are using out there, some people use Zoom, some people use Microsoft Teams, and Microsoft Teams alludes to 365 and some of the Office suite products that are out there. I use Google Documents, and I have a number of or Google Drive with the associated docs and sheets and the different tools that come with the Google platform. The cloud, while it has both some inherent issues as far as whether it's learning curve, or whether it's, do you trust I have people who will not work in the cloud because they just don't trust their data out there. I'm like, okay, you do you. And it also depends on the value of the data. Some of that really should reside on something local. But I've worked from the cloud in some of these devices and solutions and applications, because it allows you to literally work from anywhere. You have an internet connection, you can work from anywhere, and it's just boosted my productivity. I know organizations that are only using Google for Business. And it's a little clunky, it's a little slow. I sometimes, to try and edit a large document in a Google Doc It's just anyone who's used it know that it doesn't scroll as fast if it's in Word. So a lot of times I'll download it to my desktop when I'm back home, work on it there, and then re-upload it, just because it's more seamless and, I don't want to say elegant, but it's an easier way to work as opposed to the clunkiness that can come with a Google Doc or Drive sometimes. But as long as your organization is comfortable with it and ready for, look, many of us are in Florida. Are you ready should a hurricane come through? And we don't speak such words. These that must not be named. You know, are you ready? You know, I interviewed somebody years ago who had one of the early adopters of VoIP, voice over internet protocol, you know, phone systems. And he's like, I just unplug my phone, I take it up to Orlando to escape, and I'm fine. I mean, obviously now it's even more seamless than that. But are you ready for what may happen? Because whether you're here and we have, you know, tropical weather, you have storms all around the country. You could have an earthquake. You could have a wildfire. You could have ice storms in the Northeast. You could have an event like a pandemic or something that just shuts down business where you are. Right. Are you able to work, you know, whether remotely or literally remotely, not in your geographic area? You got to boogie and be productive tomorrow. So that's part of what you need to look for in your technology.
So I keep watching the chat, and actually it's a lot of fun on that chat. So if you're not on, you should be watching what some of these folks are saying. But great advice. And Kathleen out in Seattle, yeah, I see that you're on. Thank you so much for joining us. She's been remote for 15 years. And that does bring up a question. Let me pivot from the devices, and we can come back to it, but to productivity. Because, you know, for those of us who have worked from home or worked in coffee shops, we were doing it for productivity, but this is a different type of working home-based work. You know, before it was you'd pick up your computer and you just needed to get away from folks for a little while, so you'd go to an anonymous coffee shop and do some work. Now we're in a completely different setting. How do we measure success? How do we talk about productivity in this new world, Jeff?
Well, I think that there's a couple of great points with that, and that is something that touches everybody who works from home, and managers are especially keen to that, because there's always been, there's two sides to this coin. One is that managers worry that if I can't see you, I can't manage you. So you can't be being productive if you're not in front of me. Obviously, again, post-pandemic, you had to, if you believed that, then you had to take a leap of faith and say, okay, my team's going to be productive. You should have your own measures. So Jeff and Tony, let's, you know, we're not CEOs of our company. Let's say Jeff and Tony are employees in an organization. We're sent home to work. You know, we have to have measures. There has to be something. If Jeff has a deadline of Friday, did he deliver on Friday? Does he have, you know, waypoints along the way, you know, deliverables along the way that he has to meet up with and deliver or submit? Does Tony have something? Does he have to present or present to a group or contribute to a project? That, again, there's different ways to measure productivity. The other side of that coin, and I would say to any manager, many managers, and I've read articles about this, I've been saying this for years to organizations, it's sort of tongue in cheek, but one of the greatest secrets of the work at home environment for managers is that they will get their people will be even more productive working from home. Yeah. They're not commuting to work. They're not commuting home from work. They are in many instances pre-pandemic, people who were allowed to work from home were very thankful for being allowed to work from home, and therefore sort of cranked it out. And so managers saw that their productivity increased. And so that jokingly was kind of a secret among managers. You're going to get a more productive team out there. But look, if you think that you need to see your employees in order to manage them and ensure they're productive, then you missed the boat before the pandemic ever hit. I mean, that's not how we measure productivity. You should have those measures internal. And there's a certain level of trust also. You know, obviously you can have software that monitors keystrokes or monitors activity and monitors login. On a side note, I interviewed a company recently down here in South Florida that has an application for proctoring exams. It's nothing new, but it can proctor exams and certifications for the workplace, exams in the university or high school setting. If you happen to look away, it sees that you're not looking, and it can sort of prompt you, better keep your eyes here. You know, so there are technological ways and applications that you can tell when your people are working, or when, as easily as simply as when they logged in, when they logged off. You know, but there has to be a certain level of trust. And on both sides, the employee has to say, you can trust me. and the employer manager has to say, I'm going to trust you. And with Honor Lock, which is the product I was talking about, you know, they presume innocence, and they want to help people, you know, just make sure that you're, you know, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that's kind of what it comes to with productivity. Obviously, as you spoke, there's a fridge right outside there. I don't have a TV in my home office. You can't see, but I don't have anything in my home office that will distract me aside from, you know, social media on my desktop. And I used to try and adhere to a social media embargo, sort of between 8 and 6. Right. Monday to Friday, just to keep me off it, because it's a black hole. You can get sucked into the vortex and look up and it's 3 hours later. I will play music in the background, because a lot of people who work in technology will have their headphones, their earbuds, and like having music just because it helps them just zone in on what they're doing. But productivity there are a lot of distractions, a lot of things you can do. Working from home, there's always laundry, there's always cleanup, there's a dog that needs walking. Another rule of the home office, and it's tough. And one of the things that I've been saying a lot lately, and I truly believe it, that my heart goes out to anybody who has been thrust into a home-based workplace for the first time, and they have school-age children, or, you know, preschool or school-age children. Our kids, our youngest is 22, so we raised them in the home office setting, but it was never, you know, sort of compelled upon us, and there was never something that brought them home to quote unquote homeschool, because they could not be in a school setting because of an illness or a virus like a pandemic. But that said, home officing is not an alternative to daycare. You have to come up, let's put the pandemic aside. Let's say we come up with a vaccine, or it's, you know, immediately poof. If we want to continue home officing, it's not so that the employee can avoid paying for daycare, or can have their child at their hip or in the playpen behind them after paternity or maternity leave is over. You know, you really have to think of this is an office. This is you're part of a business. Stay focused on what you're doing, and it's really discipline. I mean, productivity comes down to discipline. And as an individual, you know, you've got deliverables, you got people relying on you. You've got, whether it's customers, coworkers, the team, the organization, they're relying on you to deliver, and it's the discipline that you bring that's going to, you know, really make that work.
Jeff, some great comments on the chat. Let me review a few items. First, a lot of folks really happy about the productivity, and it really does remind us that, you know, as managers, we were always focused on the fact that, you know, if you had happy employers, they would be more productive. Well, guess what? Productivity is actually making them happy employers. So we're multiplying that effect. And somebody who's not driving for 8 hours in a day is saving so much money. I saw that crazy stat on there. Another item that I'll just mention, and we can come back to. So we've been talking about how do you and I adapt and prepare for the home office, but many of the folks in the chat, I won't say many, a few of the folks on the chat have talked about the business sometimes isn't ready to go digital. For example, those folks who are case managers don't have digital files for the most part. So we're going to have to work on all sides of the operation. It's not just a connectivity and a computer issue. It's how do we rethink how we work? And there are a lot of conversations on gig economy, and maybe we'll end on some of those points.
Sure. And if I may for a second.
Yeah, please.
You know, there's others who have done all of this before us. So even though I've been working from home for 3 decades, I've stumbled upon a lot of different organizations, and I've not stumbled upon a lot of organizations that I just know are out there doing some great work. If you need to learn how to, if it's casework, if it's somehow your organization is not in the cloud, as it were, or, you know, a lot of, you know, physicians' offices, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act required that doctors' offices, physician practices go digital. And it was a, you know, carrot and stick thing. So at a certain point you had to be, or you start to pay a penalty for it, for not being so. But the tools are out there to make this happen. And I saw somebody had commented something about working in the Google suite. You know, it can be as simple as that. I mean, it doesn't need to be, you got to buy Google for Business or subscribe to Google for Business to make this work. There's a lot of organizations that I work with that I just say, you got a Google account? You use Google Drive? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's collaborate on some documents that way. And it can be as robust or as simple as you need it to be. But if you have questions along those lines, I would, as they say, GTS, Google that stuff and learn what's out there, or ask your peers, ask others in the marketplace. If there's things that I think I could run with this in my organization, I just don't know how. The technology we're using right now, well, you may not get the answer you want in this webinar, but the technology that we have available to us is really striking and a truly powerful information source. So, whatever if you come away from this with questions, keep looking, because there's others out there who have done it and will help you through.
Jeff, that was a great transition, almost like you're watching the chats too, and I can tell that you're doing that. That's awesome, because I want to really highlight something that we've noticed and a few folks on the chat. And when I started, I mentioned that we had 3 presenters today. It was you and me and the audience. A few folks are highlighting how the difficulty of this transition to remote work is making it even more difficult for individuals that have visual impairments or challenges potentially using some of these devices remotely. So I know that neither you nor I are experts in those domains, but we do have a lot of experts and individuals that are addressing some of these issues. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. As your role as a presenter with us today, I want you to go to the chat, and I want you to enter some of the tools and ideas that you've been using that have solved these problems. And if you've got challenges, then post them. Maybe somebody else on the chat can help us get through some of these things. So maybe the next few minutes, I'd love to catch up on some of the ideas that you have in terms of particularly addressing the issues that visual impairments. But I want to go to a broader conversation. So at the end of the day, work as we do it right now, short of the AI and some of these other stuff, is about humans.
Right.
And let's move beyond technology. What are the human issues that we need to deal with? Like the social needs or the camaraderie or the team building elements. Because I'll admit, I grew up in as a manager and in a generation where I had to see you, and maybe I haven't always counted the number of hours that we were together. But working together meant that we were using the same whiteboard, and it was physically in the same room, and you and I can tell each other when we were maybe not happy with the last comment or something like that. We're in a completely different world.
Yeah.
And what are those human things? I mean, how do we keep people set? As an introvert, I can work by myself all the time, but we're not all introverts.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? What are we dealing with?
Well, sadly, humans are easily the most adaptable species on Earth. We can live in any climate, throw us out in any climate, and many of us will find a way to survive. Not to say we're survivalists that way, but we adapt. This is one of those situations, and not to brush it off and say, we just got to get through it, but we do. But it's painful. And I was listening to talk radio this morning, a news show, and they were talking about people who are having a hard time, especially people who have emotional problems, that had issues coming into this where they truly needed more engagement, and they don't have it. They can't, whether they just need to be among people, need to be among family. They might see a professional on a regular basis, and now they can't. They might be doing it with a Skype or with a FaceTime or a Zoom or whatever. Even people who are just as gregarious as can be and just as comfortable in their own skin. And, yeah, I'm doing okay here. I've worked from home for, as I said, 30 years, but I've always had my wife, and we've had great, raised kids here. We need to think about how we can work together to accommodate and meet those needs. And not just accommodate. We're not being, this isn't a lab. We want this to be a living room. We want this to be a close, maintain those ties. And I've interviewed a number of executive CEOs recently for some projects I'm working on. And one of the lines of questions that we've had is, how have you adapted? You personally and your organization adapted in the pandemic. And one of the hardest challenges they've had is to maintain, I'm going to say culture, but culture is maintaining the camaraderie, making sure that they say, look, I'm a people person. I want to make sure that the most recent hire on my team is as comfortable in our organization in this remote setting as the person who's been at my side for 20 years. And it's hard. And so it really, if you're an individual who is feeling isolated, reach out, talk to HR in your organization, or talk to peers in your organization, or whoever you report to in the organization. Tell them where you stand. Reach out to family. You know, be open. This is if anything sort of exemplifies or truly points to the idea that we are in this together, that no one is alone in this. It's the fact that there are, you know, hundreds of millions of people who have been, and not just in America, but around the world, who've been sent home to work and are suddenly isolated. And so you're not alone. So if there's a way for you to reach out, look for help. You know, companies have done, they have online chats. They use applications like Slack or group chats in order to keep teams connected. They do, you know, share a picture of your dog. Some nights just float, you know, share a picture of your pet, you know, share a picture from your last vacation. What's something fun you want to do? What are you reading? They have reading groups, things like that. You may not have done a pre-pandemic, but now is a perfect time. And if it carries over post-pandemic, you know, whenever that may be, all the better. Because an organization, you know, I've heard it said that after the loss of a family member, the loss of a job or a career, and in the form of, say, you know, whether it's you were dismissed or you quit or you're fired or left a company, is you know, high up there in the top 3 of the things that truly hit people at their core and hurt them the most emotionally, or can affect them the most emotionally. This is one of those situations that could be there. So the better that we can build those bonds and have them carry forward, it will help us in the long run. And you might have fun with it. You know, you might, as an organization, say, I didn't know that about Tony. You know, I didn't, you know that he was into this hobby, or he's traveled to these places, or he's had this pet. You know, it builds ties. And one day we'll get back to where we can have a true happy hour. Or we can truly have a team building event where we're all together, as opposed to trying to do it with, you know, 30 pictures on a screen on a Zoom call. But, you know, whatever it takes to sort of keep that camaraderie high is pretty important.
So I hear folks talking about regular meetings that they have set up, team lunches, daily check-ins. You and I talked about one of these things that is blowing my mind away. As an introvert, I don't immediately think about this, but those happy hours where we're actually just drinking iced tea together and I'm sure it's only iced tea together on these video calls. I mean, people want this camaraderie. And I saw Sim's comment on the chat, and it was a great one. We have to be intentional about the informal, not just the formal here as we go forward.
Absolutely. And I've spoken to, I interviewed a CEO today from Baptist Health, South Florida. Actually, I was going through my notes. I interviewed him a couple of days ago, but I was going through my notes, and he said, when this all happened, I just set up, me and my team, we set up a bunch of meetings every day. You know, we have, and it's trying to formalize the informal. So it's not that he's setting up meetings and, oh, it's another meeting to go to, but it's really a touchdown. It's like a touch base, just to see how everyone's doing, you know, what's going on. Let's talk about the important stuff, but let's start with the light stuff. Let's see how everyone's doing, and remind them that if you're feeling disconnected, let's see what we can do to sort of help people get through this. But yeah, there's so many ways. It's communications. And again, as others have said on here, the ability to just, he said, if there's a fault, I'm over communicating. I don't think you can. In this situation, I don't think you can. And when it goes forward, you know, there'll be times that Jeff and Tony will be, you know, we're going to have a meeting at the office on Friday or on Thursday or whenever. Everyone's got to come in, and that's going to be great, you know, that we are able to do that, or where they're able to lament. I'm a full-time home officer. I don't want to have to go into the office now, but I'm going in. You know, hopefully we'll be back to that point where we can say, you know, I love my home office or I love my corporate office. And back to one of the points I made earlier, I begrudge nobody who loves working from the corporate office and can't wait for this to be over because they want to be back in that hive. Because there are people who either say I can't work from home or I don't want to work from home. And even amid all this, I'm ready to get back, and that's fine. You know, we're learning a lot about ourselves, about our organizations, about our teams, and how comfortable we are with this. And it'll be interesting to see There'll be a lot of great research done on the psychology of working from home after we come through on the other side.
One of the things that I love doing is thinking about future trends. And in an earlier webcast that we had done, a webinar, which, by the way, all of our webinars, including this one, will be housed at theabletrust.org. So you can go watch some of the past ones if you want to find out what conversations we've had, or if you want to send other folks to theabletrust.org to watch this one afterwards. But there's this notion of we've pulled the future forward faster. We've been talking about the user experience and gig economy and virtual reality and how we're going to have to communicate in different ways and change productivity. It's here, it's now. And there are some tough things. I saw in the chat a very good point. So there's a lot of things that we can do, including I asked you all to post some ideas about visual impairments and how we're going to address some of those things, given that not everybody's websites and the tools are fully available. But I don't know that we're ever going to get past how do you teach somebody how to use a cane, for example, if you can't be in the same room or if they're not working the environment that we're in. Although what we know about entrepreneurs is people find ways, and they find ways not only to do it quickly, but they find ways to make money, and there's real opportunities here. So for the clients that we work with, the businesses that we're interacting with, all we have to do is think there's a problem, and therefore there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Let me shift back to something that I might have glanced over. You and I have talked about how we interact at different times. You used this term the other day. I want you to just tell me a little bit about that, and then I'm going to talk about distractions. But circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
I've heard it. I remember it from psychology, but maybe tell me a little bit about what it means in the work setting that we're dealing with.
Are you a morning person or are you an afternoon person? I'm not asking you, but I'm just putting out there. That's what
that because I email you at 3:30 in the morning.
There you go, exactly. And as we discussed, I use Gmail, for business, and I've gotten into using the option. I might write it at 3 or I might write it at 11 o'clock at night, but I've gotten into using the option to send at a scheduled time, to schedule the send. But circadian rhythm really is a matter of, what is your biological clock in the day part setting, not, the other biological clock that people
ticking, not that one.
Not that one. But are you an early bird or a night owl? Like I tell people, as we joked a moment ago, but I'm truly an early bird. I may be up. I used to get up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm a little bit later now. We don't have kids, and I need to be out of bed at 6 to deal with. But that's when I'm most productive. You want to talk to me. If I'm typically before noon, I'm writing. That's when I'm most productive and most focused on my work. Afternoons are great. I might get a little bit more lethargic. Who doesn't need a cup of coffee or tea or whatever in the afternoon, because you sort of get that bobbing head syndrome, as I call it. But that's what is your it's circadian rhythm. What is your day part that you work best at? And again, some people, I know a lot of artists, for example, graphic designers, who are just truly night owls. They can go till 2, 3 in the morning, but don't try and catch them at 10 a.m. And that's just not the way they roll. But that it's a yin yang there, because I may be an early bird, and you and I we may be able to collaborate that way, but there may be some people who ideally they want to do their best work later, and they may need to collaborate. So on your team, you need to see how people work and what works best for the individual, what works best for you and your team, and how you guys can sort of, work together to make that happen. But it's really about knowing you. And how your style, and I would imagine anybody who's been in the workplace for a while knows whether they're, again, back to the point, an early bird or a night owl, and how they work best. And that ties to your productivity. I know that if I don't get something done in the morning, writing wise, it's probably, unless there's a deadline, it's probably not going to get written in the afternoon. I often we spoke of home offices, and I posted something at Chief Home Officer recently, a bunch of photos of all my different offices in my home. I have this home office. I have the one at the kitchen table. I have the one at the couch in the den. I have one in the living room, and my wife is working at her computer that's over in the dining room. I have one in the bedroom when I'm watching TV, and I have my laptop open, and I might do some busy work. But I just know that come 8 o'clock at night, my day is done, no matter how much I hope to get accomplished. So it's a matter of knowing how you work and what you're able to get done. If I may pivot for a moment, someone asked a question, how to take breaks. What is your need for and ability, especially in South Florida, where we live in a convection oven this time of year. You know, how do you schedule breaks? You know, I think that falls in line with how your team is working. And how would you take a break in the corporate office if you were working in the office? You know, did you take scheduled breaks? Did you stop at 10:30 for 10 minutes? Did you take a lunch? I'm not a lunch taker, and when I do, it's like 15 minutes. I go slap together a sandwich or heat up some leftovers, and then I'm back in the office. But you, again, working with, because you're remote, you might need to be a little bit more cognizant of how the team is working, especially if you're in a moment of collaborative or collaboration where you need to work together. But I mean, especially when it's wintertime and it's beautiful out, my breaks are to take the dog for a walk. This time of year, she doesn't get a walk, you know, after like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning and before like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or at least a long walk. It's just too hot, and they just repaved our streets out front. So it's warm.
Yep.
So, you know, it's how it works for you and how you can make it happen.
So you told me about the power tool. The one thing about distractions and the end of the day, and I'm seeing a few people talking about that at the moment. What do we do to close off Office and or maybe avoid distractions?
Yeah, you know, people may say that a laptop, internet connection, you know, smartphone, whatever is the power tool. I've always said that, let's see if we can pivot. That thing right there with my bass guitar on it and whatever, the door that closes is the power tool of the home office. You know, especially when you have stuff going on outside, you close the door, you know, I don't want to say locks you in, but locks you into the moment. You're able to work with far fewer distractions. Then when the day is done, you step out, you close the door, you're less inclined to take a peek in, and, you know, the door's open. Oh, I see I got an email on the monitor. Let me go deal with that email. One more email. You know, there's never just one more email, you know, so it's always out there. But I've always believed that, and that's also to the point that if you can afford it in the grander sense of the place where you live, if you could have a dedicated workspace all your own, whether it's a office with a door that closes, whether it's, you know, in part of, say, a living room, a den, part of your bedroom, if you can't block it off, if you need sort of something to break up the cacophony behind you and keep you focused, you can put up, you know, those Japanese, what they're called shoji screens, those big panels you can put across that block it from the rest. You won't see it. It doesn't, if your office, look, who wants to clean their office at the end of the day? Mine's a mess. I don't want people to see it. If it were out in the common area, it would be an eyesore. So you can do a row of potted plants. You can do anything that can kind of put it on the other side of, say, a sofa, where your desk may be a butt in the back of a sofa. There's all different ways to separate your workspace from your living space when you're you know, when you have a home office, especially if you don't have one that's a dedicated space like another bedroom that is not being used.
Jeff, let me bring in our third participant, Jeff Zbar with the chiefhomeofficer.com. But we've also got each of you participating on this webinar, and I appreciate so many great comments on the chat. We've talked about intentionality. We've talked about platform differences, about tools that are working, about different accommodations for different abilities or disabilities, productivity. Lots of great comments, but here's what I want you to do. We're winding down this program. We've probably got another 10 minutes here, and we want to invite you to ask some questions. So if you haven't been putting questions in the chat, I want to invite you to go to the Q&A feature. It's also on the toolbar, and you can submit them there. We're monitoring those. I'll try to make sure that we can ask Jeff. Jeff, a lot of times, actually, let me give you your assignment as our third panelist here. So we work with individuals. It doesn't matter what type of business or entity you're in. If you're a VR counselor, you're working with individuals that we're trying to adapt and get into the workplace. If we're any other type of business, we've got customers and clients that we're constantly trying to accommodate. Give us a list of some of the challenges and maybe workarounds that you've got. For those, we've got a few hundred folks that are still participating in this webinar right now. Fantastic. Give your best tips for accommodating, for user experience, for this remote work. Think about the last 6 months that we've been in this very unique, I'm not going to say the word, but you know which one I'm talking about, that whatever. These are unusual times, but they're also informative times. So each of you has had a lesson from the last 6 months. Share it. Share it with somebody on here. If you're a VR counselor, there is no doubt that another VR counselor on this feed would like to hear it. If you're in a business, in a manufacturing setting, if you're Mike Myrie with small businesses, let us know what you have learned over the last few months. Want to know what you have to share. And that first one right out of the gate, patience is a virtue, is one of those things. All right. We can probably tread ground with some of the questions that might be submitted again, but let me just talk about the future here. I told you this is one of my areas of passion, and you're a business writer. You're a nationally known expert for working from home or home-based businesses, but you're also a big thinker and somebody that engages with businesses in Florida and across the country on some of these big questions. This isn't going away. This isn't something like if tomorrow the vaccine was out here and by Friday of next week everybody was covered. Give me your crystal ball of what's ahead.
Two things come to mind, and I don't mean to sound overly dramatic, but I do believe these are two industries I would not want to be involved in, and that's the owner of office space and the broker of office space. Yeah. Those are going to be changed. We're still going to need offices. Again, there are going to be people and companies that need them. I don't think you'll ever have a law firm or an accounting practice or any, the big four consulting firms. I don't think you'll ever see them as remote as they are now once this is under control. It's not going to go away, but hopefully we can get this under control. So I would hate to be a big landlord who now has tenants who are saying, what am I paying X million dollars a year for in rent and utilities and insurance, et cetera, to have people come in when I only need a third, a quarter, a fifth of whatever of that space, so that I can create some sort of touchdown space so that Tony or Jeff can, go on and say, okay, they log in and say, I'm gonna need a desk next Thursday, reserve a desk. I mean, they've been doing that forever. I've been writing about telework for 25 years, and some of the early adopters of telework did that in the sense that they were getting rid of their big space and they were just creating what they at the time called touchdown space. So literally, Jeff's going to be in Austin on whatever day, or I'm going to drive down to Fort Lauderdale on whatever day. I just need that little a space for the day, and that's all I need, and I would reserve a space. And I think that's, and the people who broker, who handle those leases they're going to have to be, there's smart people behind there, and I think we're going to see some significant pivots going on. But, the live work, we've seen a lot of this in the downtowns, down here in South Florida, downtown Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Boca Raton, West Palm Beach. The live, work, play concept is really going to come to fruition here, because people are not going to have to leave the house or the apartment or the condo in order to do their work, but they're still going to want to live a robust life. So they might, we've had greater connectivity from a transportation standpoint. We've had Brightline and Tri-Rail and different solutions like that. But I think that's what we're going to see. And I think that employers, as landlords, are going to have to take a look at or are going to take a look at the space that they're using. And I think that their landlords are going to be taking a look at how the future holds, what the future holds for them. And I think it's too soon to tell, but I think that we're going to see dramatic change along those lines. And I think it's for the better in some ways. Obviously, it's going to hurt. We've heard something as simple but as dramatic as the football season. The Saturday football might not happen
in the South.
Yeah, and think of all. I went to University of Florida. Think of all the businesses.
Do they have football? I forget.
They used to. I think they something Mullen Ball. I think it might be coming back. But all those businesses, those little mom and pops, whether they're restaurants or selling apparel, and they thrive. It's like they say about most businesses. I forget what the statistic is, but from Black Friday to Christmas Eve, that makes their year. Yeah. That I don't know how we're going to see that this year unless you're doing a lot of online sales, and that's kind of what you see with retail across the board. It's going to be a dramatic change. and we're in the midst of it, we'll hopefully come out okay on the other end. There's going to be some pain and suffering for the people who work from home and are able to work from home, and in companies that have employees that they embrace this and see this as both a challenge but an opportunity. Think it through. Think how you're gonna be able to make this happen on the other end. And in some ways, it will not happen. In the sense that you have people that will need to be in an office setting, like I said, attorneys. You mentioned Royal Caribbean. There's other companies out there that they need people in a collaborative environment to make some of their work, thrive. That's the way it's going to be. We're going to have a blended model, and just look forward to that some way this is going to blend. But again, we're adaptive. We'll make it. We'll shine in coming through this.
So we do have a question here, and maybe we can use this kind of as a capstone. We've been talking about what it's like to go into remote or home-based work, and we've talked about the tools and the technologies that we need and how we're going to interface and interact, and the intentionality that we have to have about training and communications, about culture, about turning things off at the end of the day. But there's more to this. I mean, there's the operations that you were just talking about. Most of us would have said back in that building over there, but now it's in the cloud somewhere. Great question about HIPAA, with health security of information, but there's also lots of other secure and private information that maybe you don't want out there. Some of us work in public record setting. We've got to fix the shops that we are from as well, the case files, the computers, the systems inside the organizations, not just those in our own home. Any advice for those of us who are business managers or case or policy makers even that are on this call about what do we got to be thinking about as we go forward?
I would look at it from what would legal say. I mean,
It's still a true maxim, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, but in all honesty, that's how would they say to do it? I mean, I know that my wife does, she's a nurse practitioner, and she does virtual trainings for children who are learning a certain therapy. And they're saying, oh, can we just do it via FaceTime? She's like, no, I'm on a computer that meets HIPAA guidelines, and you have to be, you can, but I can't. So we have to connect a certain way. But the guidelines are there not to be a roadblock or an obstacle. They're to help you protect yourselves. So whether it's something like HIPAA, whether it's whatever your industry is, and the protective nature or the regulations that exist, I got to say that if they're out there, you should have been thinking about this already before this. If those regulations exist, if they, and that's why at the beginning of the conversation, we spoke about not maybe letting people use their own computer. You don't know what software is on there. You don't know how robust their antivirus or anti-hack or anti-malware software is. So, this is where I sort of semi-jokingly said, run it by legal, but run it by IT as well, and HR, and see where these, where are we covered? Where are our weak points? And let's work together to make sure that we cover all that, because this is going to be, as we've said a dozen times already, this is I hate the line new normal, but this is life. And whether the pandemic, we eradicate it, we make it sort of like the measles that may have flare-ups, but otherwise it's gone. Let's hope that we get there. Home officing, telework is not going away. I think companies have realized, the best part is companies have realized it can be done, and employees have said, hey, it's not that bad. So it'll be here. So you have to see the solutions sooner than later, so you don't get gummed up and, sort of, get blindsided by something that you should have known, especially if you get a call from some sort of organization or, regulatory agency saying, oh, we heard some of you have been a little footloose and fancy free with the data and client files and things like that.
So one of the things that I've been trying to tell folks, and if you're a business on this line, thank you so much for considering and working in a home-based environment, because that actually is one of the greatest openings for working in an accommodated setting for a person with disability. Lots of adjustments, things that we have to still take care of, but home-based businesses can work for lots of folks, and particularly for the audiences that we deal with. So folks can ask us more questions. We'll stay on the line for a little while longer through the chat and the Q&A. And they can reach me at info@abletrust.org, info@abletrust.org, or Tony@abletrust.org. Jeff, if somebody wants to know a little bit more about the work that you do, chiefhomeofficer.com, but any final words or things that you want to share with the audience about how you can continue their productivity?
Yeah, if they want to email me, jeff@chiefhomeofficer.com. I welcome any emails they want to send, and learn more at chiefhomeofficer.com. If this is a work in progress for all of us. Someone asked a question. I saw a question: how to handle toddlers and middle schoolers.
We're asking for a friend because my assistant is having a baby, and she thinks that it's going to be easy because the kid will just be in the background. So we want a real serious answer here on how we're going to solve this problem. So.
Yeah, no, I tell you, my answer was always let the baby sleep as long as possible, even if the wife may be a little frustrated when she gets home and the baby napped for 4 hours during the afternoon and is up till 10 or 11 or 12. As we said early on, telework is not an alternative to daycare. A couple of things that you can do if you and that we did, and this is hard. Middle schoolers are especially tough because they don't, may not want to focus on their schoolwork when they get home, or if they're at home and trying to study at home. You got to try and get some sort of accommodation from your employer. If you can shift your day, if part of your day doesn't have to be, you don't have to be with, on your computer 9 to 5, 8 to 6, whatever the time is. Maybe say, look, I'll work earlier, take some breaks during the day to be with my kids and shepherd them, and then work a little bit later. That may work for you. Another option is if you have toddlers and you have young, and I did this when I had, young kids in the household. I went to the local Brownies. I got in touch with, we didn't have, sort of adolescent girls in the neighborhood just by virtue of where we live, but I called the local Brownie troop or whatever, how I was able to find it. And I said, I need a babysitter, someone who can come over every day after school for about 2.5 hours until my wife gets home and, entertain my children. And we were able to do that. You may have a neighbor who could do that. I had my mom live nearby, and Lord knows she loved coming over and watching the kids and keeping them, out of my hair as I tried to work. But again, it's not an alternative to daycare. You got to make it work. And like I said at the beginning, my heart goes out to first-time home officers with kids who are home from school in the middle of this, and having to try and make both of those work. It's tough, but I have articles on my website as well, chiefhomeofficer.com, that speaks to some of that. And then again, Google that stuff. There's a lot of people with a lot of great advice, and people out there who may be able to help you to learn how to, in your community, ways to make it work and make it work safely. You don't want to bring a child in from a neighbor's home if you don't know that they've not been self-quarantining, or they've not been under some sort of, staying at home to avoid infection. So, we all have to maintain our own levels of safety.
Fortuitous. I didn't do that to you, Jeff, but it looks like you blipped out at the moment. It might have been me, who knows, but I'm going to go ahead and talk before I turn it over to Guinevere. Just kind of summarize. Home-based business is still a business, and we've still got to focus on all the productivity tools and have all the right attention and focus on people. For those of us who work with clients, who work with individuals that we're trying to get into a new setting, this is all possible and doable, and we'd love to get your points. One of the things that Jeff would have said if he were still on, and I'm not sure if you are or not, is that we want to try and update some of his tools. And if you've got advice or comments about things that we should be considering and talking and helping businesses with in terms of preparing their workforce, particularly workforce that might normally need some level of accommodation, send it to us. We're going to update some of Jeff's comments and his resources. He's very generously offering up chiefhomeofficer.com to assist us in getting the word out. Guinevere, as I turn it over to you now, I just want to remind folks that I greatly appreciate the comments and the connections we've had on the chat today. If you want to let us know about other programs and things that we can be talking about, feel free to reach out to us. We're in this together, and I appreciate each of you who are supporting the Able Trust, and look forward to supporting each of you. So Guinevere, are you still there? All right. Well, let me wrap up with these comments then.
I am sorry.
There, that's okay. I thought everybody abandoned me.
No, not at all. All right.
Jeff, you're looking good there. Welcome back. We volunteered you to update some of the resources that you have. I told them about the idea we had about updating potentially some of the resources that you have on chiefhomeofficer.com so that we can add elements about accommodations and ADA and a few other things. So thanks again for everything that you did today. Brilliant, and I love working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Tony and Jeff, and everyone here in the audience that chimed in today. We have been really inspired by what you all have shared and the solutions that each of you have found and shared with one another. There are still outstanding items and things that need attention, so share with us those solutions and challenges that you know of. You can connect with us at info@abletrust.org, and we are looking forward to receiving all of your solutions that everyone has found. What really struck me with the chats that were shared and comments that were shared in the chat was just how much each of us really have some real gems of experience in each one of these corners of what we're trying to accomplish. So if we can collect those different best practices and pull them together, the Able Trust would love to do that. So please connect with us at info@abletrust.org. If you visit us on the website, you will find the July issue of the Florida Trend. You may have encountered this as you flip through the magazine, but also you can find this on our website. And this is an article about Melissa, who is an alum of the Able Trust High School High Tech program. And also connected with this article is a companion link for downloadable resources. So you can find this on www.abletrust.org, and you can connect with our different materials and resources to download. So what comes next? The recording of today's discussion will be posted next week to our website, along with a key takeaway summary, and we have lots of gems and best practices to add into there. So thank you to everyone from the audience that participated with that. Secondly, follow us on Twitter at abletrust.org, at AbleTrust, and to stay up to date on all of our work. And thirdly, I am moving along too quickly, but thirdly, our next meeting is a town hall discussion on September 2nd, and this will be really a fantastic way to come together. And we are doing this with the Florida Department of Transportation, and it will be a real opportunity to gather advice from community leaders and persons with disabilities about the Florida Transportation Plan. So registration for this event will be coming soon next week, so look for that. And when it does hit your email box, don't let it end there, but share it out with your clients, friends, families, and neighbors so that they have an opportunity to listen in and be part of the conversation as well.
Hey, Guinevere, before you close, I think I heard Jeff back on. Do you mind giving him just one more chance
absolutely.
to chat here? Jeff, are you still there? Maybe he's just on my FaceTime. Go ahead, Guinevere. Thank you.
I think he's having some connection issues, but
we just wanted to make the point that no matter how much you know about all this, there's always an opportunity that could go sideways quick. So this was all for demonstration purposes.
Can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Yes.
There you go.
There you go. Check that out. Yeah, you know what? I think someone out there was had gremlins in the system.
Yep.
So, but let me just say thank you very much for having me on board. At least we got through the meat of it. could have happened in the first 5 instead of the last 5. So
Thanks.
we did okay. But thank you so much. No, I seriously, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out, jeff@chiefhomeofficer.com, and I'm more than happy to help people through anything they may have, any additional questions that we were not able to address through the course of the presentation. So thank you, Tony, and thank you for the team. So I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for dialing back in. Really appreciate being able to be connected today and have your thoughts and your leadership on this. So I really appreciate that.
Well, I have all this technology laying around anyway, so I can't do it on my desktop. I got a laptop nearby. I got a smartphone. I got a tablet, So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing some time with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you to everybody in the audience that participated. We really appreciate that you joined us this afternoon, but also that you laid in some questions and comments in that chat box and shared with your peers. So if we did not get to your question, we would like to please share it with us at the email info@abletrust.org. It has been a real privilege to learn from one another. And on behalf of everyone here at the Able Trust, thank you for joining us, growing our virtual skills and know-how together and for your individual work to promote employment opportunities across the state of Florida for so many Floridians with disabilities. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.